We're still in Chapter 6 of The Manipulated Mind by Denise Wynn, and this is video number 8. The effects of resolving cognitive dissonance can be far more extensive and harmful than simple self-deception. Henry Dix describes an account of how Nazi thinking took hold, which illustrates the point. From licensed mass murder, Frau von Bayer-Kat has skillfully depicted the process of regression towards the acceptance of Nazi group norms or ethos in various social contexts after the party came to power. At mass level, there were the constant uniformed triumphal marches, day-long singing of the party's Horst Wessel song. In short, the build-up of a we feeling from which no patriotic, decent person could stand aside. One had to cheer too. It now became easier to succumb to the subtly introduced blackmail of party pressure through the appearance in offices, industrial plants, etc., of uniformed or at least openly Nazi believers. In the climate of Germany of those days, such people easily became paranoidally regarded and feared as planted secret informers. Thus, conformity, always a strong social motive, by colluding with those early elements of terror in the shape of authentic representatives of the new and required group ethos, replaced individual rational criticism and moral judgments. People had to vie with one another in public to mouth the right sentiments. At first, a person with an averagely humane conscience would condemn himself for this lack of moral courage and self-betrayal. This became too intolerable, so the second stage was a denial. Surely there had to be some truth in what Nazi's beliefs he had to assent to in his group. Talk, in the social psychology of social movements, evocatively describes the dilemma of cognitive dissonance without using the word, when he comments on an extremely personal, rude letter sent to an editor of a paper from the follower of some leader that the editor had written unflatteringly about in print. Commenting on the letter, Talk says, the latent message in this communication is something in the order of, your negative characterization of one of the leaders of my movement hurts me deeply because I had come to rely on this person and others like him for security and support. If what you said were true, I would be in a serious predicament. I am therefore constrained to regard you as a very evil person. Talk illustrates here not only the nature of the resolution of dissonance at work, but the power to strengthen belief that an attack on that belief can have, as mentioned in Kiesler's work. Philip Zimbardo, in Influencing Attitudes and Changing Behavior, mentions the role that cognitive dissonance seems to play in the specific case of conversion to the beliefs of the Moonies. He points out that people are invited, not forced, to come on a weekend retreat to hear about the philosophies of Reverend Moon. He suggests that a person who doesn't believe in the philosophies but sees himself behaving like others who do, while uncoerced to do so, will have to reduce the dissonance created by convincing himself he does believe in Reverend Moon. One way to reduce dissonance is to seek social support for one's own position. By finding other people who hold the same views, one can justify one's holding of them. In the case of cults, says Zimbardo, where old lifestyles are abandoned for new, it is necessary to draw as many people as possible into the new lifestyle, so that the ever-increasing social support for the decision to join confirms its obvious rightness. The same sort of thing happened, as we saw, with Mrs. Keach's followers, who actively sought converts after they had had to face the dilemma of carrying on believing in Mrs. Keach or else acknowledging their own gullibility. Dissonance theory may help to explain why some people, when they are converted to a belief, hold on to it longer than others. Hoffman ran an experiment to test the role of conformity needs and the persistence of a conversion. He subjected a number of students to pressure To change, he subjected a number of students to pressure to change their attitudes on a particular topic. 2 weeks later, he tested them to see how many still held a new view and how many had reverted to the old. He found that those who had a high need to conform had far lower persistent conversion scores than those who had personalities less prone to conforming. The author says, Suggestive is the finding that the longer one resists altering his position under pressure conditions, the longer he retains the altered position in the post-pressure condition. It might also be said that the longer one resists changing his position, the more need he has to square his change of position with himself by believing it all the more wholeheartedly. Sargent notes the same effect, although he contributes a different reason. He says, in Battle for the Mind, the amount of consolidation needed to fix new patterns of thought and behavior must depend on the particular type of nervous system as well as on the methods employed. Some persons seem to absorb new doctrines much more readily than others, but the slower or more obstinate types can be trusted to grasp them more securely once accepted. Philip Zimbardo, in an article on cognitive dissonance and the control of human motivation, makes an important observation on the nature of responsibility taking. When subjects perceive that they must make an important decision and that they have a choice in committing themselves to one of the possible alternatives, they must then assume responsibility for that decision. This process is one of the few behavioral events which makes them and us uniquely human. As the justifications, be they hedonistic, mystical, or rational, for making a given decision increase, the decision becomes more externalized. The individual can point to circumstances which compel a given course of action, limit his choice, and reduce the risks attendant upon personal responsibility. In short, extrinsic justification minimizes the necessity for intrinsic justification. For psychological reevaluation of the alternatives for changing one's values, attitudes, or motives. It happens from observations of our subjects' behavior in these experiments and also from less controlled observations that most people try to avoid making decisions or accepting responsibility in situations of free choice. And that was video number 8 of Chapter 6. We are reading from The Manipulated Mind by Denise Wynn. And we will see you in chapter 6, but in part 9.